My name's Hank Walker. I've been a farmer all my life. And the day I lent my old Ford truck to a stranger was the day I stopped being invisible. It was July. The kind of heat that pulls sweat out of your bones. I was out fixing a busted fence on the south side of the property. Barbed wire older than me, sagging like everything else I owned. That's when I saw him. Walking. Alone. Dust on his jeans, backpack over one shoulder. Looked like he hadn't slept in days. Maybe weeks. He tipped his hat like it was 1955 and asked, real polite like, if I had a truck he could borrow. Said his broke down 6 miles back, and he was in a real hurry. I looked him up and down. Gut said no. Wallet said yes. He pulled out $200 in cash. Folded neat and quiet. Told me he'd bring it back before sunset. I stared at that crumpled stack like it could save the farm. So I gave him the keys. He drove off like he knew where every pothole was. Sun went down. No truck. No call. By midnight, I figured I'd been played. Ellie, my daughter, told me I was too trusting. Maybe she was right. But come dawn, there it was. Parked right where it had been. Clean. Locked. Key on the seat. Like nothing ever happened. Except one thing. In the glove box, tucked under old insurance papers, was a sealed metal case. No name. No logo. Just heavy. Cold. Wrong. I stood there, fingers resting on the lid, heart hammering in my throat. I should have walked away, but I'd already opened the door to something much bigger than me. I didn't open the case right away, just stared at it like maybe it would explain itself. Steel. Smooth. No hinges, no seams, but heavy as sin, like it wasn't meant to be moved by just anybody. I took it to the barn and slid it behind an old cabinet where I used to hide Christmas gifts when Ellie was little. She hadn't smiled much lately. Hell, neither had I. By afternoon, 2 black SUVs rolled up slow on the dirt road and stopped at the edge of my land. Government plates. 2 men got out. Clean suits, sunglasses, no dust on their shoes. City types. The taller one spoke with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. You see any unfamiliar vehicles out here in the last 24 hours? I said no. Just tractors and a feed truck, and even that was 2 days late. He nodded, glanced around like he didn't believe me. His eyes landed on Ellie's photo taped inside the truck's cracked windshield. He stared a second too long. Then they left. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't need to. That night I waited until the house was asleep. Pulled the case out and laid it on the workbench. My hands hesitated, but my curiosity didn't. Inside were rows of silver cylinders. Smooth, unmarked, like futuristic batteries. Packed tight in foam. No labels. No barcodes. Just cold metal humming softly. I tried Googling. Nothing came up. Not batteries. Not weapons. Not anything. Just firewall blocks and government warnings. Next morning, the local news flashed a headline across the tiny gas station TV. Homeland Security prototype missing. Believed stolen. Last tracked in western Kansas. I froze, because my land was western Kansas. And whatever was sitting in my barn wasn't just strange. It was stolen. I went to Pastor Bill that morning. He'd known me since I was 12 and my dad passed in the wheat fields. Never judged me even when I nearly lost the farm to bad credit and worse luck. I didn't tell him everything. Just that something strange had landed in my lap and I didn't know what to do with it. He sipped his coffee, eyes scanning the horizon. Hank, some things come into your life to test your faith. But some come in to burn it down. Best know which one this is before it's too late. I didn't have time to think too long on it. That afternoon, Ellie came home from school early. Said some man in dark sunglasses followed her after class. Didn't say anything. Just stood there across the street, watching. Then Roy showed up. My late wife's brother. Broke, bitter, and drunk. Like usual. Smelled like diesel and bad decisions. He pushed through the screen door, mumbling about how I owed him for taking care of his sister before she passed. When he spotted the case on the barn bench, his tone changed. "What's that, Hank? Government handout you ain't told me about?" I told him to leave. He smirked. "Or what? You gonna hit me with your precious secrets?" I dragged him out the door and slammed it shut. He cursed all the way to his rusty pickup. I stood there breathing hard, watching him disappear into the dust, my gut twisting. That night I checked the barn. The lock was snapped clean. I rushed inside, heart pounding. The case was still there, but heavier. Something had been added. Or maybe someone was trying to hide more inside it. I stood in that barn for hours, didn't touch the case, just stared at it like maybe it would confess. Whoever came in didn't steal it. They added something. That's not theft. That's strategy. The next morning, I made an anonymous call to the sheriff's office. Told him I found a strange object on my property. Maybe a hunter left it. Maybe not. A young deputy rolled up an hour later, barely out of training, judging by his baby face and nervous grip on his sidearm. I led him to the barn and pulled the tarp off the case. He took one look, then stepped back fast. Didn't ask questions. Didn't touch anything. Just keyed his radio. Seconds later, a voice crackled back. Low, urgent. Clipped. He turned pale. Stammered something about needing backup, then hurried out without another word. Didn't even close the gate behind him. I knew right then they knew exactly what this case was, and they didn't want it in daylight. That night, after Ellie went to sleep, I couldn't help it. I brought the case back to the kitchen table, grabbed my late wife's knitting needle and pried up the foam padding. Underneath the silver cylinders, taped flat against the steel, was a USB drive. No labels, just dust. I slid it into Ellie's old school laptop. What opened wasn't normal. Encrypted folders, military logos, spreadsheets full of money trails, and one document at the top. Intended final holder, H. Walker. Code name, Midnight Sparrow. I leaned back in my chair, heart punching against my ribs. This wasn't left behind by mistake. It was left for me. Couldn't sleep that night. Not after what I saw on that USB. There were wire transfers. All offshore. Shell companies nested inside more shell companies. And totals that made my head spin. $14 million. $28 million. $47 million. One folder was labeled Active Pipeline. Vail/TX/NM/Kansas. That's where I live. Right in the dead center of it. I printed everything I could, unplugged the laptop and stashed the papers all over the property. Under the chicken feed in the old silo, even inside Ellie's old treehouse. I didn't know what any of it meant yet. But I knew this. If they came for me, they'd have to find 100 pieces, not just one. Next morning, something weird happened. The local seed store, the same one that had denied me credit for 2 straight seasons, called out of nowhere, said my debt was cleared. Forgiven. Just like that. I asked who paid it. He said, "Don't know, Mr. Walker. Invoice just says settled. Enjoy the harvest." I hung up and drove straight home. That evening, while I was feeding the goats, Ellie brought the mail. Bills. Ads. One envelope. No stamp. No return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. Typed. Clean. Keep quiet and you'll keep winning. I looked out over my fields. The wheat was green again. Growing too fast. Unnatural fast. Like it was being controlled. Like something or someone wanted me to know I was being watched. Pastor Bill showed up around dusk. Said he had a feeling. I told him everything. He didn't blink. "Son, this ain't luck. This is leverage. They're buying your silence with fake blessings." I looked down at the paper again, and I realized the real danger had already begun. I drove 2 towns over that morning to dig into the past. The county archive building smelled like old paper and dead secrets. I signed the visitor log under a fake name and asked for historical property records. The woman at the counter didn't even blink. Kansas hospitality, I guess. I sifted through dusty ledgers and microfilm until I found it. 1979, temporary lease agreement, United States Defense Projects Division. My land. Signed off during my grandfather's time. No expiration. No revocation. They'd used our property for classified military testing, and no one ever told us. Legally, it might still belong to them. As I left the building, a pickup followed me for 4 straight blocks. No license plate. I didn't go home. I circled the cornfields, took the long road back to the farm, and parked behind the shed. That's when I saw him, leaning against my fence like he'd never left. The stranger. Same ball cap. Same dust-covered jeans. Same dead calm eyes. I figured you'd open it, he said. I clenched my fists. You set me up. He nodded, not denying it. We had to choose someone no one would look at twice. Someone buried by life, not connected to the grid. I stepped forward. Why me? His answer hit harder than I expected. Because it's your bloodline. I froze. He took off his cap. And that's when I saw it. Same chin. Same eyes. Older. Meaner. He was my half-brother. Raised by the government. Trained. Hidden. Used. He leaned in and whispered, "Give the case back and they'll erase you. But if you keep it, you become the storm." I drove for 3 hours after that. Didn't know where I was going. Just followed the kind of roads where no one asked questions. Ended up in front of an old army surplus yard just outside of Larned. Rust on the gates. Flags half torn. And inside, hunched over an old transmission, was a man my father used to talk about in hushed tones. Mr. Denton. Used to be a logistics clerk at a secret base back in the 80s. Retired now. Forgotten by most. When he saw me, he didn't say hello. Just lit a cigarette and said, "I wondered how long it'd take you to come looking." I pulled out the USB, placed it on his workbench. He didn't touch it. He just started talking. Said my dad had been part of something called Project Sparrow, a black ops civilian network that helped smuggle whistleblower tech out of dangerous hands and into rural hiding spots. Farmers, janitors, mechanics, invisible people hiding visible evidence. And my family? We were one of the original drop points. I wasn't just chosen now, I was born into it. Turns out, Midnight Sparrow wasn't a code name assigned to me. It was my father's. And now it was mine. I stared at the floor. All this time I thought I was just a man trying to save a dying farm. But I wasn't some random farmer anymore. I was part of a legacy no one remembered, because remembering it meant risking everything. Denton's voice broke through my thoughts. "They won't stop, Hank. You know too much. But maybe it's time someone finally finished what your daddy started." I nodded once, because now I had nothing left to lose. It happened at 4:12 p.m. Ellie didn't come home from school. At first, I told myself the bus was late. Maybe her phone died. Maybe she stopped by a friend's house. But by 5:00, I knew. I found her backpack tossed by the roadside, right outside the south pasture gate. Her phone screen was cracked, face down in the dirt, like someone wanted me to find it. Then came the call. Blocked number. No voice, just a recording. "You have 24 hours. Bring the case. Alone. Or she disappears forever." I dropped the phone. I couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. I went straight to Pastor Bill. He didn't say a word. Just handed me an envelope, heavy with cash and a worn leather pouch. Inside the pouch was my father's old pocket pistol, still loaded. "Your daddy helped me once," he said. "Time I returned the favor." I drove back to the barn, opened the false floor under the hay. There it was, the case untouched, still cold. I pulled it out, packed it with copies of the USB contents, stuffed the real drive inside the oil filter of my old grain truck. If they wanted the case, they'd get it. But not the truth. Not my daughter. That night, headlights lit up the field like an airstrike. I walked out holding the case. From the shadows, the man stepped forward. Not the government goons. Not the stranger. Roy. Drunk, wild-eyed, shotgun in hand. You think you're better than me, Hank? You always were. But guess what? They paid me to fix that. I froze. He'd sold me out. For a bottle and a burner phone. And Ellie was the price. I stared Roy in the eyes. He was drunk, but not stupid. The shotgun shook in his hands, but his aim was real. Behind him, headlights flickered again. Out stepped 3 men in suits. Not government, private, sharp. Vale SEC contractors. Same devils from the Project Thornton files. The lead one smiled like he'd already won. Truck. Case. USB. Now. I held up the case. He reached for it. I dropped it. The trigger in my left hand clicked. Boom. Fertilizer rigged under the false floor lit up the barn like a 4th of July funeral. Confusion exploded with it. I tackled Roy, disarmed him, and cuffed his wrist to the tractor axle using my belt. You want a payday? Sell this story. I ran to the silo, pulled the tarp off my old grain truck. Ellie was inside, duct tape on her wrists but eyes sharp. Not crying, not broken, just waiting. I cut her loose, started the engine, and hit the switch Denton had helped me install. The truck roared to life and broadcasted everything. USB data, bank trails, military contracts, live, across 5 whistleblower sites, 1 journalist's inbox, and a private server Denton still had in a basement 2 counties over. We drove straight through the night. By morning it was everywhere. Farmer exposes $100 million government cover-up. Kansas man uncovers secret military pipeline. Whistleblower's daughter targeted by defense operatives. By noon, federal agents had shut Vale SEC down. Roy was arrested. 2 senators resigned. I refused interviews. All I said was, I fixed the broken thing. It just wasn't a truck this time. They offered me witness protection, relocation, money. I declined, because I'd spent my whole life being told I was nobody. And now the whole world finally knew my name. 1 year later, the fields were finally quiet. No black SUVs, no helicopters, no strangers with clipped accents and fake smiles. Just wheat swaying in the breeze, and a father who finally had time to fix the gate that squeaked since 2004. I rebuilt the barn, painted it red again, put Ellie's name over the door, not mine. She earned it. She graduated early, studying agricultural law now, wants to help protect small farmers from the kind of war we didn't ask for. Pastor Bill still visits every Sunday, brings peach cobbler and old stories. Some of them might even be true. We don't talk much about what happened, not because we're afraid, because we're finally at peace. But peace, like rain, never stays long in Kansas. One evening, while checking the fence line, I saw it. An envelope nailed to the post. No return address. No stamp. Just 1 line in thick black type. You passed your test, Midnight Sparrow. Time for your next delivery. Inside, a single truck key. New. Black. Smooth. Military grade. And folded beneath it, a map. Not of Kansas. Of Montana. 1 town circled in red. No explanation. Just a challenge. I stood there for a long time, staring down that dirt road, knowing what it meant. They thought I was done. But maybe I wasn't just a protector of truth anymore. Maybe now, I was the one who delivered it. I slipped the key into my pocket, walked back toward the barn, and smiled. Because I knew this story wasn't the end. It was my new beginning.